Hi and welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to discuss going on a cruise to Alaska and what it is really like. We just got back from our cruise in May to Alaska, and we chose the Celebrity Edge to cruise on. While in port, we almost always saw ships from Holland America and Princess Cruise Lines, so if you are thinking about going to Alaska, check out at least all these 3 lines. We boarded our ship in Seattle and immediately had lunch. We had left our luggage dockside at check-in and knew from previous experience that it would take a while for our luggage to make it to the room. The food was wonderful. I have cruised on both Princess and Holland America before and much prefer the quality of the food on Celebrity. Like most ships cruising Alaska, Celebrity had an onboard naturalist to discuss relevant topics regarding Alaska, and before we hit our first port, we had already been to our first discussion, which focused on Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway, and the things we might see and do there. Our first stop was Ketchikan. We booked an early morning excursion and got off the ship immediately after it docked, and we were cleared to disembark. There was no mad push to get off at 7:30 a.m., which surprised me, as on other cruises I have been on, there is always a line to get off the boat. But on this Celebrity cruise, we did not encounter that at all. We walked up to the waiting area for the tours to meet, and were done with our tour by 9 a.m., and we went off to explore the town. We walked by the Lumberjack Show, which is a show that draws a lot of cruisers. Since I had been to it before, I didn't go this time, but it is worth going to at least once, as it is fun and provides a history of the lumber industry in Alaska. The cruise ships sell tickets to this show, which means they walk you over to it and hand you a ticket, but you can also book it yourself through their website and save a little money. Another way to save money is to do a walking tour of the town on your own. You can take a self-guided one or find a free one online, where the cost is just the tip to the guide. There are trolleys you can jump onto as well if you don't feel like walking, and these have guides on board. But the town is small, and if you have good weather, you might want to walk. We walked into town and had a sunny day. So after we walked past the Lumberjack Show, we headed for Creek Street, which used to be an area for paid escorts. Now, one of the houses is set up as a museum you can tour, called Dolly's House, and the remainder of the structures are mostly shops. If you continue walking, you will arrive at Married Men's Trail, which was the more discreet trail that men used to use to sneak over to Dolly's, hoping not to be seen by the townsfolk. While on this side of town, if you are there at the right time, you may see the salmon running in the creek without going on an expensive tour. But the salmon only run for a short period of time, and you may miss it, depending upon when you cruise Alaska. We then stopped at Bowden Street Brewery, where we tried a flight of craft beers that were brewed on the premises and had an impromptu tour. I called over to the guy on the factory floor if I could come in, and he said absolutely. And in I went for a discussion of their process and even was allowed to climb the ladder and look into the beer tanks. The people there are super friendly, and in Alaska, the rules are just less strict than in the lower 48. Our last stop in town was the Alaska Fish House. I prefer to spend my money eating specialty foods from the region rather than specialty dining on the ship. This is one of many seafood restaurants in town, and it is the one with the longest line too. We waited until the Princess liner had already left town, but still spent about 10 minutes in the line before we could order our fish and chips. The next day, we cruised through Endicott Arm to Dawes Glacier. We arrived in the early morning. You really need to go out on deck for the best viewing. There are so many amazing viewing spots on the ship. You can view the fjord and glacier from the jogging track, the magic carpet, the rooftop garden, or really anywhere on deck. We saw a small boat pull up to the side of the ship and passengers boarded it, and later learned that there was an excursion that took you closer into Endicott Arm. I'm considering that myself for the next trip. Our next port was Juneau, and our naturalist on board prepped us for this stop with a discussion on the whales of the area. If you want to whale watch, this is the stop to do it at. The other big option is a trip out to Mendenhall Glacier, which we loved. Both of these are great options. Either can be arranged directly rather than having to book directly through the cruise line. Just check online for the options. There is also a tram that can take you up the mountain for a great view, as well as a state museum. And of course, more seafood to be eaten. This is the stop where we had king crab. We went to the Tracy's Crab Shack, and it was fresh off the boats. Our waitress explained how to open the crab legs with a special tool, and we sat in a heated tent overlooking the water and enjoyed our lunch. Our last Alaskan stop was Skagway. We had been warned by the naturalist that this was a very small town, and if you didn't book a tour, you would finish seeing the town quickly, and she was right. I had gone on a dog mushing adventure the last time I was in town, and the train tour the time before, so decided to see what town was all about this time. We walked over to the coffee house with the biggest line and got great lattes there, and then went to the information center to find out about free tours. The park rangers have a free film and a free tour of an old house which had belonged to Soapy the local villain. We saw both, and then headed over to the Red Onion Saloon for lunch, which was so much fun. It is set up as an old Western saloon, and the waitresses stay in character and are fun to interact with. Since this was a beautifully sunny day, we went over to the Klondike Brewing Company and sat on their patio and tried their craft beer. They even have small glasses, so you can try out several, and once again, after asking for a tour, I was given a personal tour of their beer production floor. Our next stop was the helicopter tour office, where we discovered we could save $200 if we booked this adventure direct versus through the cruise line. It was fully booked, but I will be back in Alaska next year for another cruise and intend on arranging the helicopter tour then. I met others coming off the tour, and everyone loved it. Our last stop was Victoria, Canada, which we arrived to at 5 p.m. and were able to get off the ship at 5:30 p.m. By this time, it was too late for us to enjoy any excursions in town, like Bouchard Gardens, so we took a taxi to the old historic hotel. The Empress had drinks in the lounge, and then explored the downtown area. And that wraps up our review of Alaskan cruising. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the like button. We drop new content weekly.